Well, it's a quick turnaround for Austin FC after the victory in LA at Bank of California Stadium against LAFC. All of a sudden, Austin shifts its sights to a team that's just 1 point back of the lead in the Eastern Conference, as Orlando City SC shares a little bit of history with the city of Austin. We'll dive into that in just a moment, as we're joined by, again, Bruce Silverman. And Bruce, a former voice of Orlando City SC, these days calls Major League Soccer on TUDN sometimes when you watch the English language feed, either with the SAP channel on Univision or on Twitter. Of course, Bruce continues to call some matches around the USL Championship on ESPN+. We're going to dive into how Bruce and I got to cross paths years ago. But Bruce, hey, great to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Lincoln. It's good to see you actually moving and in person, sort of. It's been a while, but I'm excited to join you today. And I know we've got one or two subjects we can get into.
Yeah, obviously for Austin fans, they're riding the high of being atop the Western Conference. And in fact, all of Major League Soccer in the Supporter Shield standings right now with those 23 points. As again, Austin 23 points. Orlando City is one of several teams tied at 20 points, 1 point back of Philadelphia over in the East. And Orlando's arguably playing even better on the road than they have been at home this year, including a win last weekend at Toronto. Orlando is one of the few teams not playing on a short turnaround. They did not play on Wednesday like much of Major League Soccer. But before we get into that matchup, let's dive into your incredibly interesting and entertaining career so far. As much as I've gotten to do, I'm always kind of curious, what's Bruce up to, and jealous when I see you pop up on a national call. You and I crossed paths back in the North American Soccer League, not the first one, but the most recent one. I was calling matches in San Antonio for then the Scorpions, while you were calling matches for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. You and I actually got to share a press box for the first time, thanks to that Soccer Bowl in 2014.
Sure.
Bafa Pico, before he was with FC Dallas, before he was with Houston Dynamo.
Before Philly, before Sparta, before St. Pauli. Yeah. That was a great trip. That was a great night. It was a fantastic game. It had so many subplots mixed into it. It was a lot of fun. It was great to finally meet you in person. Unfortunately, we came up on the wrong side of that final that day.
It was a 2-1 final, went in favor of San Antonio. Goals for San Antonio from Rafa Castillo, as well as a bicycle kick from Rafa, Billy Forbes, who wound up leaving a mark in Florida as well as in Texas, came through in what was his rookie campaign. Those are entertaining days in the NASL. The New York Cosmos seem to have a grip on that league with a talented coach by the name of Gio Salvarese.
Never heard of him.
Never went on to do anything after that. So Fort Lauderdale Strikers, of course, you would go on to call Miami FC matches. You're there in the Sunshine State. One of the players you got to cover at Miami FC, a young man by the name of Michael Lahoud.
Yeah, Mike is truly one of my favorite players, and I'm not surprised that he's in broadcasting right now. So articulate, so passionate. Soccer IQ was through the roof. I love going to practice and walking off the pitch with him and just talking about the beautiful game. I learned a lot from Mike and always enjoyed spending time with him. To me, I knew that when he finished his career, he would do one of two things: coach or broadcast. And, now he does both. So I'm not surprised by it at all. And kudos for Austin for bringing him into the mix, because you got a phenomenal color commentator.
How far into your broadcasting career were you when we were crossing paths in the NASL?
Well, now you're starting to ask me to age myself and do the math without a calculator.
You're old enough to rent a car. We'll divulge that.
Okay. Yes, I was old enough. I was not old enough to rent a car when I first got into broadcasting. I was probably old enough to get the senior discount when our paths crossed. No, I don't think it was really, I was that old. But I had been in my career for a good bit of time before the 2014 season came along. That was my second with the Strikers. Had 3 years with them, 3 years with Miami FC, 2 years with Orlando City. and now with Univision calling the MLS games, as well as Liga MX and USL throughout their pyramid. It's been pretty exciting. I wouldn't trade anything in my career. I've had great opportunities and great experiences, and just looking forward to more of them as we roll along.
Of course, I think we're still in the pandemic era. Sometimes guilty of saying post-pandemic era, post-vaccine era, but here during this time, we see a lot of our peers in other sports doing remote calls. For those of us in soccer, we're a decade into this journey for the most part. Sure. And for you, you've got a couple studios in your backyard there in the greater Fort Lauderdale, Miami area that allow you, as you mentioned, Liga MX, Univision, to be able to call some pretty great matches right there from your own backyard.
Yeah, in fact, last weekend you were just talking about, Austin. I had LAFC. I've actually had LAFC twice this season. Neither one of them, those games, and maybe I'll never be asked to do another LAFC game after I say this, but in both of them, really not great performances. Their captain really not in the mix in either one of those matches, which was interesting to me that he was able to be neutralized the way he was. But it's amazing to me how soccer continues to grow in this country. You've got MLS, which is going to add another team next year in St. Louis, such an incredible, historic U.S. soccer city, going back to the early days of the original NASL. There might have been some St. Louis in the mix in the original MPSL, which predated the original NASL. There was a merger there in '68. And then what's going on with USL and the growth there, and adding teams at the championship level, the League One level, the League Two level, and other leagues around the country. It's amazing to see the popularity of American soccer. You brought up the original NASL a few minutes ago, and that great slogan, "A kick in the grass." Well, it's taken a little bit of time from the 70s and 80s to get to where we are now, but you can make an argument that soccer in America is more popular than some of the quote unquote big four that we kind of grew up with, at least, people our age.
Yeah, it's an exciting ride to be a part of right now, even though, again, it was mid-'90s it got underway. I've enjoyed catching up with folks like Dave Johnson and some other original voice, Joe Totino, who were there from day one, but still here in 2021, last year, 2022, this year. It's still an exciting time to be a part of all this. You mentioned you did have that LAFC matchup the other night against Colorado. I should have just asked you for your notes for Wednesday night when Austin met LA, as I enjoyed listening back to your call. So you're the reason why LAFC's MLS record of 46 matches of not conceding a penalty attempt all of a sudden came to an end, not once but twice in that opening half.
And the wild thing about that is, technically, I called 3 penalty kicks in that match.
Yeah.
One of them was interesting because you had McCarthy coming off the line, and it reminded me of when Pedro Gallese came off the line against NYCFC in the 20 season and in the playoffs, and all the craziness that went along with that match. And you got Schlegel coming off, and taking the gloves and coming up with an incredible save. And then, Orlando City goes on and advances in the playoffs that year. It was a really, really wild match with those 2 PKs. You don't usually get 2 PKs in a game, let alone 2 PKs against the same team. And you could have made arguments. You go back and you watch the replay that LAFC maybe should have gotten at least an opportunity at the spot as well.
Well, they got that opportunity ultimately against Austin instead on Wednesday. Crapo was back in goal after the backup keeper against Colorado guessed correctly all 3 times, but ultimately
which is
saw 2
really,
get by him.
I mean, think about how many games you called, how many games I've called. I've never seen a keeper guess correctly that many times, even in shootouts. You just don't see that much.
With all the college matches I do during the postseason, inevitably we see a lot of shootouts at the end. And I just say out loud as much as possible on the broadcast, hoping somebody hears it. Put the ball on frame. Do not take that keeper off the hook, because even if they guess correctly, that ball more often than not is going to find the back of the net.
Look, anybody who's ever heard me call a game, especially when I do color commentary, which I do from time to time, and I've been privileged to call, do color for some great broadcasters, including, you were talking Dave Johnson, who goes all the way back to the beginning of DC United. But I've done color with Phil Shane, who was the original voice of the MLS back in '96.
Yeah, he called that very first match between San Jose and DC. He's the reason why Dave wasn't able to call it, because it was the national game.
And for me, some of these things are, in some of these games that we've done are just incredible. But I say all the time, stop being cute. Just put it on frame. You can't score. And I also have been a big proponent of rebounds being a statistic in soccer, because how often have you seen a guy just punch a ball away and the next thing you know, it's behind him? And if you don't put it on frame, those things can happen. If you go high, you try to pick the corners, make the goalkeeper beat you.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the bottom line.
I'm devastated for every goalkeeper who guesses correctly, stops the PK, only to then have another guy slam it home a split second later. Again, there's just, the whole deck is stacked against you. There's no excuse if you're taking that penalty to not be able to fire it home. Again,
you're a professional footballer. You're 36 feet away. Go up and kick it absolutely as hard as you can. Because if you do that, even if a guy guesses correctly, what are the chances that he's going to be able to stop it? Look, you brought up Fafa a few minutes ago. I had a PK shootout with Fafa in 2015 when he was with the Strikers. And I'm sorry, it was 2014. It was right before the playoffs. I won. What does that tell you about PKs? I was 40 something. I'm going up against the fastest guy in the NASL, and I won the PK shootout. That just tells you how much PKs are just absolute crapshoots.
Well, it sounds like we need whatever the opposite of a U22 initiative is to get you on a roster.
Oh yeah, the U60. Yeah, that's what everybody wants.
All right, so speaking about being kicked as hard as possible, that's how Austin, Texas felt back in 2010 when their professional team at the time, the USL First Division, which was the league once removed below Major League Soccer, packed its bags, went off to Orlando. Again, very brief history lesson. Phil Rollins purchased a PDL team in Austin, quickly branded it the Austin Aztecs. They even had a development side, the U23 team. Wolfgang Sunholtz was leading the way for that club, but Adrian Heath's first ever job in the United States was right here in Austin. It was leading the Austin Aztecs for those 2 years. They played at high school stadiums like Nelson Field and House Park. And even Jamie Watson suited up for the Austin Aztecs before his NASL, MLS, and now, of course, broadcasting success. But at the end of that 2010 campaign, despite as much as Austin fans had poured their hearts into that team, really embraced that team, Phil Rollins and company correctly believed that Orlando had a path to Major League Soccer. They moved there in 2011. Don Garber confirms by November of 2013 that they'll be the 21st franchise, joined that league in 2015. For you, just generally on the scene in Florida, you hadn't had Major League Soccer since both the fusion of Miami and the Tampa Bay Mutiny exit in 2001. What do you recall about hearing just Orlando with hopes of having a team is coming to town from Austin, and then ultimately within a couple of years, their ticket is punched?
You know, I started, it's interesting. You talk about my time with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. First soccer match I ever saw was at Lockhart Stadium, the original NASL, June 8th, 1977. Cosmos and the Strikers, Pele, Beckenbauer, and Canalia all score. If that is not, in a 3-0 win over your home team, if that's not an introduction to soccer, if that doesn't get you hooked right there, absolutely nothing is going to get you hooked. And so for me, I've followed soccer ever since, going to striker games, fusion games, you name it. I've always been a student of the game. As a student of the game, you look at all in the original NASL, all the teams that would move or fold or come back, you know, and it happened in so many different cities. So you look at what happened to Austin, losing the Aztec and then getting Austin now, and the success in its second year is phenomenal. You look at when the fusion came, that was incredible. Soccer's back at Lockhart Stadium, the original soccer specific stadium in the United States, because really it was a high school stadium. But after a year or two, they got rid of the track that went around Lockhart Stadium. They really turned it into a beautiful facility. It sat over 20,000, and soccer fans really took to the Strikers and then really took to the fusion. A lot of people believe that the fusion failed. They didn't fail. It was just an ownership issue at a time when the league needed to make some really desperate moves to make sure that it stayed afloat just a few years after its launch. And then you see now the success in Tampa Bay with the Rowdies. You have Inter Miami, you have Miami FC, Orlando City. I love being a part of that organization for 2 years. And, you know, the second one was tough with COVID. And you talked about calling games remotely. It was the weirdest thing in the world during MLS's back in 20 to be in Exploria Stadium calling the match when it was being played 15 miles down the road at Disney. That was a weird experience. But I think the more that the state of Florida has success with soccer, and I think, you know, you've got the two teams in Miami, Tampa, Orlando. There's other teams in lower divisions that are around the state. There's an indoor team in the middle of the state. This is where MLS teams come to train during the offseason, during preseason. The youth clubs are phenomenal all over this state. There's great coaching at the youth level. We're seeing MLS with commitment of MLS Next, of developing their own players rather than going and finding players in other countries and bringing them here. I think right now, MLS, USL, their whole system is so well primed that the Big Five is going to start to shuffle in popularity. And I think right now you can make the argument that soccer in the Big Five in the United States is 3-4. And I think that's going to continue to advance as more people are being exposed not only to MLS and USL and NISA and other teams, but you got people that are paying attention to EPL like me. I'm wearing my Everton kit. I'm a long time suffering Toffees fan, hoping that they don't get below the Mendoza line and end up playing, you know, second division next year. I was devastated by the result the last time out. Hopefully we got 2 games left. We can salvage and stay afloat, because I would much rather, I would love to go over to Liverpool either at the end of the year or beginning of next year. I don't want to see nothing, you know, not to take anything away from England, you know, for English championship, but I want to go over and watch a Premier League game at Goodison. So, you know, long-winded answer to the state of Florida is a very good state for the beautiful game.
Yeah, both again, Orlando and Miami have been fun to watch over the past couple of years. Miami every now and then seems to have something clicking, but Orlando, as tough as that 2020 season was, the payoff at the end was getting into the playoffs for the first time. You were a part of that. What was that journey like, and kind of seeing the reward at the end? And we've seen that kind of build some momentum now into the past couple of seasons.
So I was with them 19 season, which was James's last year there. And it was a mixed bag. A lot of injuries. The roster didn't quite have the firepower that it had at 20, and they kept building onto it. You look at just some of the moves that were made when Oscar came in, and really some major improvements to the roster. And they got the most out of Nani. Gillespie was a huge addition. Not that Brian Rowe did anything wrong as the keeper in 19, but Gillespie, you got the Peruvian national goalkeeper. It's hard to make an argument for that. It's hard to make an argument with a goalkeeper with the nickname of the octopus. I used to make jokes about which tentacle he made that save with, because he's playing with 8 of them. And it just became a really, really fun team to watch. You had Huan on the right with blazing speed. You had a youngster on the left in Matinho that really just improved with his crosses on the right. You had the Bear that came over in the 20 season in the middle, who was very exciting. Goals were coming from all kinds of different places. Mueller was coming into his own, Benji Michel, and then out of no place, towards the end of MLS's back, Daryl DK makes his debut. And there was something incredibly special about Daryl DK. He was big, he was physical, he's not built like a soccer player. He's built like a linebacker. When I saw, he's like 6'2", 6'3", 215, I'm going, physically, he reminded me of Poku, who, people remember from NYCFC, played at Miami FC, scored that, goal at the death against Atlanta United in the 17 US Open Cup. And I was fortunate enough to call that game with a former MLSer in Eddie Rodriguez, who was fantastic on the broadcast. Ironically, that was the first game that we ever called together. And we got a really, really good one. And we've called, a number of games together since. For me, DK was just unbelievable and was the spark plug and one of the main reasons why Orlando City started really being successful in that 20 season. I would love to see what he could do right now in MLS. I know he's moved on to bigger and better things. If you look at playing in another league other than MLS as bigger and better. But what a physical presence. And he just ran onto the pitch in that MLS is next. He came in and basically it was garbage time. And it was shocking because Oscar, put a bunch of youngsters on the pitch during MLS is next. I believe it was against NYCFC to close out a match. And to me, it was like, wow, this coach has a lot of guts, a lot of chutzpah for putting in youngsters to close out a game versus going with veterans that know how to close out a game. And I thought that match was really pivotal to what happened in the 20 season, because I think that sent the message to the entire club. I've got confidence in my entire roster. And as long as you're wearing a purple kit, I know that you're going to perform for this club. And I thought that message really played well throughout the remainder of the season. And now you look at what Orlando City is doing now and the success they're having. And I think it's because of what Oscar, really took care of in that first year.
Yeah, those building blocks have all been put into place. I know now you kind of have more of an approach day to day, looking at the national landscape, as those are the more relevant assignments for you. But coming into this year, what were some of the headlines that grabbed your attention about Orlando in terms of what they were putting together for this season?
It was interesting with Nani leaving. I was curious about where that leadership would come from and where the goals would come from. I think they put together a really interesting team. The youngsters, like Juan and Matinho seem to be, healthier. So I expect some really great things out of Orlando City. I haven't had them this year, had them at the end of last season when I started working with Univision, but I really like the team. And it should be really interesting. Look, the fans in Orlando are fantastic, and they deserve a great product. They deserve to be rewarded for staying with the club during the lean years. I used to go up to Orlando City, to what do they call it now? Camping World. I don't remember what it was called. It's had a few different names, from the Citrus Bowl and everything else, or the Tangerine Bowl, even before that. Saw games in the big stadium. I think I was there for the very first game. If memory serves, I know it was the 2-2 draw against Real Salt Lake, in which they scored 2 stoppage time goals to get the point. I don't remember if that was year 1 or year 2 in MLS. But I was going to games before I was calling games for them. And even though I'm not calling games for them now, I'm always rooting for them from afar. The club treated me very, very well. I have nothing but really great memories. Marcos Perez took care of me during the COVID start when we weren't playing. And I cannot say enough about that organization from top to bottom.
Well, again, what's fun about our industry is getting to cross paths at various points in our careers. Enjoyed sharing that press box at Toyota Field for the NASL Soccer Bowl. You and I got to call a match when I made my way over to Florida to those studios.
Sure.
You were kind enough to slide over to color. I don't think I could have been quite as valuable providing the analysis that you were able to provide that day. But look forward to when you get to make your way over to Austin and take in your first match at Q2.
I would love to do that. I have a number of friends, not just you and Mike, that I would love to come and visit in Austin. And I just have to figure out when I can make the trip, to make sure that it doesn't prevent me from doing a game down here. And when I do plan the trip, I will definitely let you guys know, and take in the Texas hospitality.
Perfect. Well, it's going to be the first ever meeting, and for a lot of fans, remember those days at Nelson Field and House Park here in Austin, cheering on the Aztecs. There will be a little extra meeting as Austin FC welcomes Orlando City SC. As on top of it all, MLS relevance, Austin being the top team in the West, top team overall in the Supporter Shield standings, Orlando a point back in the East. And again, that matchup will be 7:00 Sunday. KBVO will be the local television coverage with Adrian Healy and a certain Michael LaHood, who has learned all of his broadcasting skills from Bruce Silverman by going back, I'm sure, and watching his Miami FC matches.
It's funny. It's funny because I had to really jog my memory in the years that I was calling games, when Mike was on the pitch. I had to think of how many goals he scored while I was calling the games, and it was one. He had one goal for the orange and blue when I was there, and it was a pretty special one. I like I said, I can't say enough about Mike and the quality of a person that he is, and for the Austin community to have him there and a part of the community and a part of the club, along with you and everyone else. I think it's fantastic. And when I do get to Austin, if I can sneak into a broadcast booth with either one of you guys or both of you, I would love to do it. It would be an absolute blast. And I'll ask you this: when you've been in your travels, have you ever been able to jump on a broadcast with some of your friends and just lend a little insight?
Every now and then, if they twist my arm enough, I'll jump in. But the whole time I am trying to get off that broadcast as quickly as possible, knowing that they're just kind of doing me a favor and boosting my ego. But that really, I need to let them get back to work.
No, I think it's a lot of fun when we can jump on friends broadcasts or have friends jump into our broadcast. I've been lucky to do that a number of times over the years, and I've been fortunate enough to call games with a lot of great people and a lot of great knowledgeable soccer players. I've worked with Thomas Rongen, I've worked with you and Phil Shane and Eddie Rodriguez. And, one of the guys that I really enjoyed, and I want to just mention him real briefly if I can, because I miss him. And that is one Hernan Chico Borja, who was a legend in the indoor game after the original NASL folded, played for the New York Cosmos, also played for Team America, for the few people that remember that experiment of trying to put together the U.S. men's national team and have them play as a group in the NASL, which didn't work because there were teams like the Cosmos that didn't want to release their players. Strangely, Ricky Davis didn't play on that team, but Chico did. Chico died about a year and a half ago of cancer and lived down here in South Florida. We used to get together a lot, and he joined me on a number of Miami FC broadcasts, and he is sorely, sorely missed. U.S. men's national team, Olympian, he's one of those guys that the beautiful game really misses, and had a lot of ties to the central part of the United States, played for the Wichita Wings, and was a legend there in Wichita, which I know is not too far from Texas, a lot closer than Florida. So I would be remiss if I didn't give my man Chico a little bit of love.
Yeah, I think one reason why we've stayed in this industry is we've been among the fortunate ones to get to work with people we just truly enjoy being around, regardless of what level of competition it may be. Never worked a day in my life. I'm sure you often feel the same way when it comes to showing up to the booth. And with Austin FC, it's been no different, just being surrounded by talented people that you respect, but also legitimately enjoy getting to know even further. That's included certainly you, Bruce, along the way. That's why this week wanted to have the chance to catch up with you, remind folks of all of your current endeavors, but wanted to tap into your bit of Orlando knowledge as well. No,
I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, when I saw that Mike was named the color commentator to Austin, I reached out to him, wished him congratulations. I was thrilled for him. When I saw you join the radio booth, reached out to you as well, thrilled for you. And look, we're all in the same fraternity. Sometimes we're even up for the same gigs. But I'm always thrilled when good people get good opportunities, and that's why I'm truly excited for you and Mike to be a part of what's going on in Austin, and wish the club, wish you guys nothing but the best, and wish the fans a lot, as I know how excited they have been getting great soccer back in the Austin area, and in their second year to have this much success early on. I hope that Austin continues to vie for the Supporters Shield throughout the year. And I will tell you this: if Austin lands on one of my assignments, you and I will be talking off the air, and I'll be picking your brain for that one.
Look forward to it. Again, it's Austin FC hosting Orlando City SC, 7:00 on Sunday. Pregame on KBVO will start at 6:30. Our coverage on Alt 97.5 FM, of course, on the radio will begin at 7:00 for the 7:08 kick. If you can't get us on the radio, you can always find us on the iHeartRadio app free of charge. He's Bruce Silverman. He's fantastic. And Bruce, look forward to catching your next game again, English language voice, often, whether it be on the Twitter stream or on the SAP channel on Univision. Look forward to crossing paths soon.
I appreciate it. Good luck to Austin. Good luck. Have a great call.